yell. Next time we can get it. We had some little microphones that they gave me a long time ago when we first started wearing masks because I was too quiet. So
You're so soft spoken. I mean,
I spend my entire day yelling.
I know.
So now.
Okay, we are live on YouTube right now.
All right, welcome everyone to the Millburn School District 24 Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting, March 14th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Voss? Mr. Coleman? Mr. Gray?
Here.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Pederini?
here.
Ms. Roberts? Here.
Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comments? No? Okay. Does anybody have any additions they'd like to add? All right. Information and discussion. First reading of board policies for review. Well, Vanessa and Sean normally go with the deep dive on these, but go ahead.
Yeah, I can fill everybody in. These are updates because of laws that happened last year. So last spring session at the governor or the General Assembly, there were tons of laws passed, and all of them have implications for schools of some. So most of these are just references to laws. They don't change there's nothing that fundamentally changes anything in our policy. So a lot of these were updated, in 2021, and now they have to be updated again just because whenever there's a law change, the reference changes and they have to update the policy to do that. So there's nothing substantive about these, but you can still look through them and determine if you want to change anything. We're welcome to talk about that. So this particular group, there were no substantive changes that I could find, but Sean and Vanessa will look through them too as well to get more eyes on them and then let you know if there's anything significant.
Anybody comments? Well, that was pretty quick. District phone system replacement.
Okay, so we're continuing the saga of a phone system replacement. We definitely need a phone system. Ours is hanging on by a thread here. Typically, phone systems now last 10 years-ish, and we are at 23 years for this building. And it was we were told last year when they installed this system, it was towards its end of useful life already. The technology was. The system was new, but it was one that was already becoming obsolete when they put it in. Probably saved $3. So it's old and it's barely hanging on, and getting parts and service is pretty difficult. We've had
our service is from somebody who retired from the company that serviced our phones because he's the only one there that knew how to do it. So he's been here a couple times when we switched over to the IP Flex.
So it's like
And he's very good, but
we're
we're relying on one person in the Chicagoland area knowing how to operate our system. As far as I know, I don't know if there's anybody else that has that knowledge.
So we're on life support, but we've known this for a while. We've been pushing it off as long as possible. Now it's becoming critical. So trying to look for new phone systems is difficult because it's hard to compare apples to apples when they all have different financing systems, some go to subscription, some are more upfront, some are less upfront, some, okay, we'll give you the phones if you do our monthly service fee, things like that. So, different types of phones, different quality. I don't know. So it's been a challenge. Dr. Johnson spent a lot of time on it, along with Carly and Tom, our tech service guy, and so.
How close are we?
So we have, in front of you is a worksheet, to give you an idea of 4 companies. What we need to decide quickly is a direction. So there's one of the possibilities all the way on the right is going with District 117, which is Antioch Lakes, joining with them to set up the phone system. They would house the servers, they would do the maintenance. We would be like another school attached to them, or 2 schools. So both of our schools would be attached to them. The challenge is, how do we get, what do we need to pipe between 117 and us, and that cost? So for a regular huge internet pipe, it would cost around $2,000 a month just for that ongoing. So that's $2,400 a year right there, or $24,000 a year right there that is out of pocket before we have any phones. But we're not sure about that. That's where it gets a little fuzzy. None of the other companies that we're using needs any extra anything else other than just plug it into our current internet system, because voice data doesn't take a whole lot of bandwidth. So we're not sure about how big that pipe needs to be between here and Antioch and what the cost would be. So that's the biggest cost with that option.
Are we talking like laying fiber between them, or leasing existing lines through Comcast or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, if I go by and Comcast doesn't come to this building, which this is the head-end building, so I'm guessing that they come just like right on the other side of 45. So we'd have to probably pay to have them come to the building, unless there's a way we can have it through the middle school and come through the back door. But we don't know that yet either. But just so you're aware, the Rival 5 and the Avaya cloud-based solution are both where that equipment is going to sit, and I think both of them have at least 3 different setups throughout the country. Both of them have pipes that go into Chicago where they have equipment, but they also have other places they have equipment as backups. So basically we would have the phones in the classrooms, but we'd have no equipment. Actually, Rival 5 gave us some test phones that we can just plug into the wall and use them. They have 815 phone numbers on them now because they're just test phones. But that's how those would work. So they basically just plug into the wall and connect to our network and connect to through the internet. The 117 solution is going to be, they're going to have the equipment, so they're basically going to act as a cloud-based, so we're going to connect to them. The Avaya on-premise solution means that we would purchase the phone equipment that would sit in this building, and then after 10 years or so, you'd need to replace that equipment. With the cloud-based solutions, they're going to be updating their equipment and software as you go, and then you just pay a subscription fee. We did get one more proposal in today, and we're going to need to talk to them to understand what their proposal says. I think what they did is they gave us a premise-based solution and a cloud-based solution, but as Jason said, everybody kind of puts their proposals together differently, so trying to figure out what it really says is, I know Carly and I both looked at it for probably half an hour, 45 minutes today, and I think Carly had spent more time than that on it, and we just figured it was better not to share that tonight just because we're not sure what it really said. These we're pretty clear on because we met with each of the people and they walked us through what it was they were proposing. And then 2 of them, we only had a 3-year fixed cost for 3 years, so, on these, Carly just bumped, I think, up by 5% a year, for the last 2 years. Because we did get a 5-year proposal from both Avaya and, for on-premise as well as Rival 5. So if you look at the bottom, the total, those are the estimated totals with the information that we have at this point as to what it would cost for each of those solutions over a 5-year period. Just to give you some more information, Rival 5 is a company in the Chicagoland area. They're based in Mokina, primarily deal with Illinois entities, although they do have clients in other states as well. Avaya is kind of a nationwide company that, and actually the phones that we have currently at the middle school are Avaya.
So we're not asking the board to make this decision. I don't think that's fair, given that it's a complex. But this is information to show you how we're costing it out, what our thought process is at the moment, and then we'll come with a recommendation that we'll ask you to approve in the end.
Just one more thing too, on Avaya's proposal, they're basically, Carly, is it half price or free phones? Free phones, but for that, we'd have to wait till, we'd have to make a decision prior to March 31st.
Right.
So, and 117 wants to know prior to March 31st, so hopefully we'll get enough information to get to you by next week.
What is the, do you know like what the cost reflective would be of that if we were to get the new phones, like what would that save us? Do you know that?
Well, I know what it would save us if we weren't buying their phones. I don't have it right here with me. But it still would be, it's like $8,000 less than Rival 5s.
Okay.
So, and their phones are 140 apiece or something like that. And we're talking 157 teacher phones and around 50 office, clerical, administrative, custodial, some of those areas where we have somebody it's a little bit beefier phone. And I'm sorry, we didn't put that on the spreadsheet, but we can share that with you as far as the total numbers.
So we're not supposed to have a meeting before.
Next Monday. Don't we?
No,
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next Monday.
spring break, we canceled it.
No,
Spring break's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
spring break is 2 weeks. Next Monday, we moved it to next
Oh, we
Monday.
moved it next Monday? Okay.
Okay. All right, where are we at?
With the Rival 5, the cloud base, it says no additional equipment, are they always just giving you the updated phone? Like
No,
you're saying they do the
The
update
phones
through
we
the,
would keep the same, but the equipment, the base,
Like-
the phone system
Yeah.
itself that sits in Chicago or Mokina or wherever it sits, they're gonna constantly be updating that.
so any updates just get pushed out to us?
Right,
Okay.
but basically, we're just paying a monthly
Mm-hmm.
subscription fee for the phones that we have connected.
Okay,
You guys leaning towards the Avaya cloud base? Looks like the most attractive one on the spreadsheet for me.
I'm leaning more toward the Rival 5, based on their presentation, based on they have people, they're based in Illinois. I like that bias, not as close, but because it's such a relatively small difference,
Sure.
but that's where I'm leaning today. I could change my mind after further investigation if necessary.
So, and I think I can tell you the number of phones too, and the cost. Maybe.
On the rifle at the bottom, it says the $99 for monitoring per gateway. Does that mean per phone? $99 recurring for monitoring per gateway.
No, it's a monthly cost, and isn't that included in the numbers? Yeah, so it's already included in the numbers. that you're
Okay, so
seeing.
that's not like
just
specific to the
information.
phones. Okay.
Um, So it looks like, at least on the Avaya one, it's showing 152 teacher phones, and their normal cost is $114 a piece. So it'd be 152 times 14, and then for the administrative phones, it's 35, and instead of 208, it's $104. So I'll tell you how much. So that's so if we didn't get the discounted phones, it would be about another 21,000.
Per year, or?
No,
initial cost?
initial cost.
Initial cost.
So it would add 21,000 to the bottom line, so instead of 228, it would be
Almost 250.
yeah.
That's if you went with a Avaya cloud base after the end of the month?
Yep, if we didn't do it by.
If we
March
didn't do it by
31st.
March 31st, although, even though they say that, sometimes they still let you do it later.
We shall
You know,
see.
everybody's talking about the concern, if we wanna actually get them in place sometime this summer, of all the supply chain issues. And, you know, that's a valid concern, because, you know, there are all sorts of things, I think I saw where some of the Ford vehicles, that they're shipping them without one of the chips, so that the rear heat and air conditioning, that won't work for about a year until they get the chip. So, you know, it is you know, reasonable issue, and the phones have chips in them as well, so.
Any other questions on phones? Residents, tuition.
Okay, so our district policy has been my tenure here, recent memory, has been to not allow people students to tuition in to Milburn if they live in another district. For example, if they lived in the Woodland district boundaries and wanted to attend school at Milburn, we could, the board could choose to change the policy to allow that to happen at the maximum tuition rate that's figured in our annual financial report that we saw a couple weeks ago, which is a lot. It's $14,000 a year per student. People have asked to do that, and we've always said no. Someone has asked to do that again, and I said I would bring it up to the board. And I just want to make sure that you know that we can do that. The reason why it's been recommended not to do that in the past is because the cost for any particular student might be less than $14,000, but it could be more than $14,000. So if we let one person do that, we have to let everybody do that, and you can't discriminate against anybody that might need special services, or not that we would, but we just have to be aware that if we open that door to one person, we open the door to everyone. So it's totally, completely up to the board. Technically, we could say we have room, we could cap our classes, there's other ways that we could limit how many. This isn't gonna happen very often because it's so expensive, it's more than private school, but people have been willing to do it, which is amazing, I think. So your house and,
Yeah, but also much cheaper than private placement for special ed.
yeah, a lot cheaper, so.
Well, if they were special ed, why wouldn't their local district do that, or,
They would,
so,
But if they're tuitioned into our district, then we would do it and pay for
then we
it.
would do it, but,
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody was saying, well, my kid needs special services, any public school would
oh yeah, they would.
need those. So,
What do you guys think about that?
How does it work with the special ed monies? Like the cost, and I'm not familiar with how that works. So say my kid comes here and he requires special ed services. Is that specific to the child? Like it's gonna cost X number of dollars by the district for Peter Jr., right?
Right.
Alright,
dependent on the services he might.
depending on what they need.
And we don't cost it out per child like that for students that are here, so
Right.
because there's such a continuum of services, we wouldn't do that. We have an overall special education budget.
Right,
What Dr. Johns is talking about is, we know if we sent a student to CEDAL, they would have a tuition charge. Or if we sent them to another private therapeutic day school, they would have a tuition charge. Those would be more defined costs.
okay,
And we would pay that cost up front, and then the next year, we would get reimbursed for a portion of that. I believe, but is it state or federal that reimburses us?
That's state.
That's state. And they reimburse at a rate of
It varies depending on how much money is allocated in the budget.
generally 85% of that cost-ish, or
I'd say usually 80% or less.
80% or less of that overall cost. And that could be upwards of $120,000 per student.
It ranges from about, at CEDAL, well, no, not CEDAL, but private placements, I think our cheapest is about 60,000, and I think we have had some that were in that 100 to 120,000. Most of them are in the 60 to 80,000 range, I think.
Yeah, plus transportation, which is another
Right.
40 or 50,000 a year.
has there ever been a year where there wasn't enough money budgeted for the special ed?
You're talking the feds or the state? I mean,
No,
the state.
for us.
For us? You know, where it was like, ooh, we need another 100,000 in here, we don't have it.
Well, we
I'm
have,
trying to understand
yeah,
how it all
we have
works.
had situations where we've had students go into either CEDAL and or private placement that we hadn't. Usually we have around 8 students in our district that are in either CEDAL or private placement. But I remember one year that was an extra $250,000 that we had in private placement that year because of students that moved into the district. As soon as they move into the district, if they're eligible for those services, we have to provide them whether we budgeted for them or not. So we went from our budget really looking good to, our
Yeah.
budget not looking quite as good.
So the short answer is yes, we've always had enough money to cover that on a cash basis, but we hadn't planned. So
Right.
because like Steve said, 1 or 2 students
Yeah.
moving in can really shift that around, especially when that's just one segment of our budget.
And likewise, you can have students, like,
Or the
was
other.
it last year or 2 years ago, we had, I think, 3 students that were private placement that moved out of the district during the pandemic. And so then we had some savings.
So that freed up.
But, Adam's adding it back just as quick.
Right.
Not Adam, but I mean this,
Yeah.
the students are coming. We're getting new students that are replacing the ones who've left.
Like, we just had a student move out of district 2 weeks ago, but I just heard that we might have another one moving to our district. So it's
So you never know.
exchange.
You never know, irrespective of it being a person who's willing to pay extra to come to the school, or it's someone who's moving here, you have no idea either way.
Yeah, correct.
Alright,
So for this policy, we can add that language And the board in the past chose to leave that whole section out. Whereas it gives the, superintendent may approve the request subject to the following: attend on a year-to-year basis. Approval for any 1 year is not authorization for the following year. The student will be accepted only if there's sufficient room, whatever that means. The student's parent guardian will be charged the maximum amount of tuition as allowed by state law, so we would charge the max. The student's parent guardian would be responsible for transporting the student to and from school. That's why there's not that many people who would be willing to do that. That's a lot. I would not.
Are there any of the districts in Lake County that allow that you know
I don't know. It's
of? I'm not
very
familiar
uncommon.
with anybody that is.
Milburn did it at one point.
How did that go?
Yeah, were you around then, or was this pre?
Well, this is what I've been told, so I don't have firsthand knowledge. But there were circumstances where people were tuitioning in, but it was more for temporary, few months till their house was built. And we would still probably do that.
Yeah,
Well,
have
we
been doing
still do that.
Yeah, we still do that.
So if you've got a contract on a house, when all these houses were being built like crazy, and people want to close right on August 1st, but they want to start, they might close on October, November, and they didn't want to start somewhere else and then come here, they would, if we had a contract signed, they would pay a per diem tuition rate. It's still very expensive, but they're willing to do that to get their kid to start at the new school. So that's what we did in the past, and then we had a couple people whose house somehow never got built.
The kids stayed
Mhm.
the whole time?
Mhm.
Well, at that per diem rate?
At that yearly tuition rate.
Oh.
What if the student, for whatever reason, was a discipline problem, would, obviously you wouldn't ask them back the next year, but would there be any other considerations?
They would get this, they'd be following under the same disciplinary procedures as any other student in the district at that point, so.
So it wouldn't necessarily disqualify them from returning the following year.
I don't think you could do that, that would be discrimination.
What if, I mean, I know that it's not something that happens often, but are you aware of what the cost ratio was from when it was? As far as like, when students tuitioned in, did they cost more or less? Cause I know you mentioned that there's a possibility that they could cost more.
Correct.
Like, do we know what those numbers looked like when we did do it?
There was,
There's eight divided by student population chance of it happening.
yeah.
Well,
The only student that I know that did it for more than like a few months was probably under that number, right at that number, just the average. But that's only one.
Does the average student that attends here now cost more or less than that maximum state tuition rate?
No, that's the average for all students. So they calculate that by how much we spend in our operations. It's a good question. How much so we take whatever accounts toward.
Well, except it's not all the accounts, it's only
It's not
certain
all
ones.
the accounts.
So
but
it doesn't come up, so it's not like taking what we spend and then dividing it by the number of students.
No, there's a little bit of separation, but largest, it's the ed fund, it's the transportation. You take all of what we spend on operations and instruction and divide that by the number of students.
Okay.
So that cost has gone up significantly.
And that's what the tuition rate would be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. There's a formula, it's in the annual financial report and the audit, where the auditors have a formula where they have to, cost all that out.
Okay.
It's one of those,
And that's in
that big thick binder, yeah, yeah. It's toward the end.
okay.
How many requests like this do we get, say in the past 5 years?
One a year. Usually though, when I tell them the cost, they say, oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I guess we'll look for a house.
It does sound like it'd be easier to buy a house,
Yeah,
but maybe not right now, I don't know.
I don't know. There's only one house, in the Milburn district that's, not under contract or contingent right now that's for sale.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So, yeah, maybe it would be easier to pay tuition than buy a house here. All right, any other questions tonight? We can bring it up again at the next meeting and talk about it more if you guys are interested in that. It's obviously something that's not necessary that we do. Summer school proposal.
Okay, I have provided you with a summer school proposal. This is a very, 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 very rough estimate. And the trouble with summer school is we don't know how many kids we're gonna have, nor do we know how many teachers we're gonna have. So it's kind of a guess as to what might happen or could happen once registration opens up. So what I did is estimated some of the costs. Our purpose is learning loss, to recover learning loss due to COVID. That's what the grant money is designed for, and some money can go toward enrichment too. So we'll have some enrichment classes for kids. But generally what it looks like in the K4 group, or the current K4 kids, they would be focused, they would be more like their regular classroom, so they'd be in a classroom with their teacher, just an extension of the school year. That teacher would do the reading and the math, and also some fun science, social studies, different activities with the kids. Make it fun, but it's more an extension of the school year.
The exploding volcano.
What's that?
The exploding volcano.
Yes.
Exploding volcanoes, yes.
The best.
Lots of glitter,
So nice.
because the custodians love glitter, so do parents. So that's what it would look like at the K4 generally. At the 5 through 7, current 5 through 7 graders, they would have maybe one ELA class, and then the other classes would be more of an enrichment opportunity. So, last year there was cooking, there's like a prairie, they created a prairie garden at the middle school. What else did they do? There was a PE class, there's all kinds of different classes the kids could take, and there was a 3-period day, 8:30 till noon, you're done, out, have fun. So it's good. We'll see what happens, and the only thing that I'll point out is tuition. We're thinking about charging tuition to offset some of that cost, because the overall estimated cost is $95,000. I'm not sure if we have enough grant money left for that or want to spend that much. So we're looking if we can offset some of that tuition or some of that cost with tuition. We're looking at what it would cost us, given all of these parameters, would be $562 per student, which is a lot. If you take out transportation, it's $375 per student. But I think offering that transportation is a huge component to getting kids here. It's great for parents. They can, for those 16 days, get their kids out, get a little bit of a stretch, and keep the learning going. I think it's a great opportunity for our families and for the kids.
How come the 5-7 has the ELA but no math? It's
Because
ELA,
I can't
then
find a
it's,
math teacher.
oh, is that it? That's the determining factor?
Yep.
All right.
Yet. Good question. That's why I say this is all an estimate based on.
Proposed.
Gotta be able to staff it, and I gotta have the kids show up. So we'll try to keep the class sizes around 10. So you want that to be a nice, intimate, fun experience for the kids and the teacher. Be a little more relaxed, but have some learning involved in that too.
What was our, class size last year, last time?
About the
Yeah.
same. Some of them though, some, so we talked about caps this year and waiting lists because some of the more popular cooking classes at the middle school were 20 and it got to be not. It wasn't,
Not fun.
I mean, the kids had fun, but it was too much chaos. So we're trying to keep that under. There's a possibility of a sewing class this year.
And there's no lunch, this is all out before lunch.
All out before lunch, so we don't have to worry about that, which
That's nice.
Any other questions?
we'll try and get something more specific to be approved next week, kind of. But this will be just kind of a range because I have no idea what it's gonna end up costing, but just to give us an idea. And we'll try and decide on if we're gonna do tuition. We're not sure if we charge tuition that we can also use grant money, so it might be one or the other.
What was last year, like 100 something?
Zero, we charge nothing.
No, I mean for the total cost of summer school.
I don't know, I'd have to tally it up.
Yeah. We had 2 sessions, last year was tougher, we had 2 sessions. We can look at, so that would cover 2 different budget years, which gets a little fuzzy, but not fuzzy, technically, but fuzzy to keep track of.
It may not be applicable, but.
Yeah, right. No, we'll see what and there was 200 and some kids involved last year, and I think it'll be a little less this year, just because last year the kids were so hungry just to be in school.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be in school more. This year, I don't know. Seems like there's a lot more absences this year.
Oh, any other questions on summer school? School board meeting dates for next year.
Okay, so we sent out the proposal. We would go back to 1 meeting in July if you're amenable to that. If not, I can add back a July meeting. 1 meeting in December. We did that this year. December just gets busy and it's a shortened month, so it's hard to get everybody in. And other than that, we looked at it to try and avoid spring break and school holidays, all that fun stuff. So take a look at that and we can approve that at our next meeting. Check the calendar.
All right, questions on that? Future agenda items, student discipline, board policy for review, anything else we want to add? Okay. Superintendent's report.
Superintendent's report. We had 4 wrestlers go to the state tournament last weekend. I'm not sure how they did yet. I haven't had a chance to check,
That's
but
awesome.
that is awesome, and that's more than typical, so that's great news. We're doing IAR testing, that's the Illinois Assessment for Readiness. That's our Illinois state test. There's 5 days of testing, it's lovely. But middle school did theirs last week, elementary started theirs today. Mr. Walsh, are you doing 1 test per day, or how does that?
Test per day.
1 test per day. So we're trying to spread it out for the kids so they don't get too overwhelmed.
Is it over the course of the whole day? Sorry.
It's not the whole day. It lasts,
No.
they have a big window, but
Math tests are an hour, and there's 3 math tests, and then the ELA tests, third grade it's 75 minutes, 4th to 5th grade it's 90 minutes.
Right.
So at most it's 90 minutes.
but aren't they given a window double that for some people?
That counts towards the time and a half.
Oh, okay.
So usually, typically kids get done within that time.
So kids are getting done in 30, 40 minutes. So it's not as bad as it was a few years ago. Still terrible. I don't like it.
Does this one replace a previous Like, that's a new acronym for me, I haven't heard that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
High school has the Prairie State and
yeah,
the SAT.
yeah, so this is just the lower version is all this, okay,
Yep.
alright,
Yep, it used to be the ISAT test, Illinois.
that's what I was thinking of, okay, yeah.
Something, GE test,
Use Park.
oh, Park.
Park, I remember Park.
Yeah, that was
Mark
brief,
was
wasn't
for
it?
Park was
Park was a quick
That was short.
flash in the
That was like-
pan,
That was like multiple states working together on the same assessment, and then Illinois just decided.
yeah.
Right, it's changed every few years lately. ERLA scores, we do a local assessment, it's called the Independent Reading Level Assessment on our kids in kindergarten through 5th grade. We do that how many times a year?
It's an ongoing assessment, so it's not necessarily considered a benchmark, it's just, students are working towards goals within their levels, and so it's a continuous assessment throughout the year.
Continuous assessment. So, Mr. Walshire pulled a report last week on it, and at the beginning of the year, he pulled a report on October 1st. There were 42.5% of our kids at the elementary that were in the proficient range. Now there are 70% of our kids in the proficient range on that assessment. I know it's one assessment, it's one little indicator, but that was pretty exciting news. Also, comparing to pre-pandemic, so March 1st of 2020, we were at 69% proficient. That's impressive. That's an indicator that I think we're almost recovered, at least in reading at the elementary school. We're pretty close to being recovered back to pre-pandemic levels, which is a great testament to our teachers and how hard they're working and kicking butt in the classroom, really doing some heroic stuff this year. So through it all, that they've maintained a focus on learning, and it's so appreciative and evidenced on that particular test, and we'll see what the IAR shows us as well. And then in May, we also have the NWEA test, or Measures of Academic Progress MAP test. So we'll have that to triangulate some of this data and make sure we're doing what we need to do for our kids, at least in the academic side. Ukraine, we may be pushing out some information on how families can support Ukraine if they're interested. The Lake County superintendents are working together to do some collections for people in Ukraine if families are interested. I know there's been some donations already by teaching staff, and I know there's many other organizations that we all belong to that are raising funds, so no pressure to do that, but if people are looking for a way to donate and help the Ukrainian people, we'll be doing that as well. That's it.
Thank you. Business office report.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot to report. Most of it's been working on phones lately, but we did get one final, yeah, it came already. One final tax payment that I wasn't counting on. If I just look at the payments for the 2020 paid in 21, even though we're getting our final payments in calendar year 2022, we got 99.73% of our levy. We received those taxes. If I include the taxes from prior years, then this year we received 100.30% of our levy. So we've always been in the 98, 99%, close to 100%. So we're still continuing that trend. I think I had reported last month maybe about one of the classrooms that we had here at this building that had a musty smell in it. We did, it was a break of a day off or something where they came in and, because, or no, I think they came in on the weekend, but basically we changed out all the ceiling tiles, they replaced the HVAC filter, did some other cleaning in that classroom. I then had an environmental company come in and do air quality testing, and everything came out fine. I stopped in that classroom this evening, actually about 4:30 or so today, and touched base with the teachers just to make sure that everything was still smelling okay, and I didn't notice anything, they hadn't noticed any issues. So I think we've got it resolved. The air quality testing, when they're looking at mold and other kinds of contaminants in the air, they compare the inside to what it is outside. And I don't have the report yet, I did get a verbal, but from my memory, I'm thinking that the counts in the classroom were somewhere around 40, the counts outside at the time, if I remember correctly, were about 4,000, or was it 400, Ben, do you remember? I know I told you on the phone, but I don't, maybe 400. But anyway, significantly less inside than outside, so, you know, there isn't any concern over air quality issues. I will at some point have a written report once they get that to me, but we waited until we got the verbal results before we moved the students back in the classroom. I think that's pretty much phone systems. I can't think of anything else that I need to report to you on that. Definitely our taxpayers are very good about paying their bills, which is wonderful. That's not the case in every community.
Thank you, Dr. John. Does any board member have any reports? All right, I'd like to make a motion to move to closed session for the purpose of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
Second.
We need a roll call.
Ms. Boss, Mr. Coleman, Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Federini,
Yes.
Ms. Roberts.
Yes.
The board enters into closed session.